Welcome back to Wisdom Unveiled. We're diving into some fascinating conversations with Iranian philosophers, Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani.
For this deep dive, we've got 40 audio files of Marifat to explore.
Yeah, we do. And for this episode, we're going to be focusing on the insights of Rumi.
Oh, fantastic. The 13th century Persian poet and Sufi mystic.
Exactly.
Rumi's work really is just a gold mine of wisdom.
It really is.
Before we jump in, a quick disclaimer for our listeners. These conversations are translated, so, we might miss some nuances.
For sure.
We apologize for any discrepancies that might come up.
Totally understandable. I think it makes it even more exciting for us to try and, uncover these gems of wisdom together.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in. What really struck me was Rumi's perspective on prayer.
Yeah.
It's not just about presenting a wish list to a higher power, is it?
Not at all. No.
Yeah.
In fact, Dr. Dinani highlights a really interesting idea from Rumi. The beauty lies in the very act of wanting something from God. It might seem counterintuitive, but think about it. God's already complete, all-powerful, lacking nothing.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Help me understand this a little bit. Why wanting something from a being who needs nothing would be considered beautiful?
Well, when we express desire to God, even if it's for something that we lack or long for, we're acknowledging our dependence on a higher power. It's like a child crying out to their parent for help. We're recognizing we're not self-sufficient. And there's something beyond ourselves that we need.
I see. So it's about acknowledging that need, that vulnerability. It almost sounds like a form of surrender.
Exactly. And Dr. Dinani connects this to the Sufi practice of dhikr, which means remembrance of God. It's about consciously directing our attention, our awareness towards the divine.
So it can involve certain phrases or visualizations.
Yeah.
But really, it's about that constant state of remembrance.
Exactly.
Okay. So would you say that prayer, in the way that Rumi sees it, is similar to dhikr? It's not about reciting memorized words, but it's about cultivating a state of connection with the divine.
You hit the nail on the head. Dr. Dinani even states, the very act of attention to this matter, our inherent poverty before God's richness, is a form of prayer. And this brings us to another interesting point. Rumi talks about the significance of tears in our connection with the divine.
Tears? That's a very interesting connection to prayer. I'm very curious to hear more.
Well, Rumi's poetry often uses tears as a powerful symbol. And in one of the audio files, Dr. Dinani explains that tears represent a breaking down of our ego, a turning away from material attachments, and a turning towards God.
So it's almost like those tears are washing away the barriers we've built up between ourselves and the divine.
Precisely. There's this beautiful verse from Rumi that really captures this perfectly. Wherever there is flowing water, there is greenery. Wherever there are flowing tears, there is mercy.
Wow. That's a beautiful image. Tears symbolizing that softening of the heart, humility that allows us to receive divine grace. But I have to ask, what about when it feels like our prayers are going unanswered? Those times when we pour our hearts out, but nothing seems to change. And it can be really disheartening.
Right. That's a question a lot of people wrestle with. But Rumi offers a really unique perspective on this. He suggests that even if our specific request isn't granted, the very act of crying out to God is a form of communion. It's that raw expression of our need, our vulnerability, our longing for connection.
So even when we don't get the specific outcome we were hoping for, there's still value in expressing that need, that yearning to a higher power.
Absolutely. Dr. Dinani shares an anecdote about a man who complains that his prayers are never answered. And a wise person responds to him by saying, "Your very lamenting and pain and burning is our messenger."
Wow, that's powerful. It really reframes the whole experience. Even our pain, our frustration, it's all a form of reaching out, of connection.
Exactly. It's about the sincerity of our yearning, the depth of our feeling, not necessarily about getting a specific outcome. And this sincerity is crucial to understanding Rumi's perspective on the greatest request we can make in prayer.
Okay. I'm really interested to hear this. So what should we be seeking above all else when we pray?
Well, Dr. Dinani shared a personal aspiration that he focuses on when he prays, and it really resonated with me. He prays to increase in sincerity and truthfulness.
That's interesting. Why sincerity and truthfulness? I can see how those would be important qualities, but why would they be the ultimate request in prayer?
Because, as he explains it, sincerity is the foundation for all other virtues. It's about aligning our inner world with our outward actions, striving to become more genuine and authentic in everything we do.
So it's not about praying for material wealth or success in the worldly sense, but really it's about refining our character, deepening our connection with the divine through true self-reflection.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true fulfillment comes from within, from aligning ourselves with what is true and good. And that kind of inner transformation, that journey of becoming more sincere and truthful, has a ripple effect on our relationships, our actions, and the world around us.
It's like that shift in focus from external desires to inner transformation has the potential to make us a source of light, of goodness, of positive change.
Yes, and it can change our relationship with Rumi's poetry, too. Dr. Larijani had an interesting take on this. He suggests that instead of getting bogged down in analyzing every word and metaphor, we should approach Rumi's poetry like a love song to the divine.
So feel it, don't overthink it.
Exactly. It's like listening to a piece of music that moves you deeply. You don't need to understand every note or chord to feel its impact.
I love that analogy. It's about letting the beauty and wisdom of Rumi's words penetrate our hearts and minds. Let them inspire us on our own spiritual journeys.
Speaking of journeys, there's one concept that is very central to Sufi thought and can seem a bit intimidating at first: Fana.
Fana. That sounds intense. What does it mean?
It's often translated as the annihilation of the self, which I can see why that might sound scary.
Annihilation. That sounds like the end of everything.
It's not about literally ceasing to exist or becoming a blank slate. It's more about dissolving the illusion of separation from the divine.
Okay, so not becoming nothing,
Right.
but realizing that interconnectedness, that oneness with everything.
Precisely. Dr. Larijani used this beautiful analogy. Imagine a drop of water merging with the vast ocean. The drop still exists, but it also becomes one with the immensity of the ocean.
I see. So it's like we're recognizing that we are both individuals and part of something much greater than ourselves. We don't lose our identity, but we see that fundamental connection to the divine.
Exactly. And that realization can be a powerful catalyst for transformation.
So how does this idea of Fana, this merging with the divine, play out in our everyday lives? It's such a lofty concept. How do we bring it down to earth?
Well, Dr. Dinani emphasizes that it starts with recognizing that divine spark within ourselves and within every being we encounter.
Okay.
It's about shifting our perspective, moving away from a sense of separation towards a sense of unity.
So instead of seeing ourselves as isolated individuals, we start to see ourselves as part of a larger whole, all interconnected and woven together.
Yes. And this shift changes everything. It affects how we relate to others, how we interact with the world, how we experience life itself.
And this is where the idea of companionship becomes really important, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're all connected, then our relationships take on a whole new meaning.
Absolutely. Dr. Larijani spoke about companionship as a reflection of this divine unity. It's not about finding people who complete us or fill a void, because fundamentally we are already whole and complete. It's more about recognizing and celebrating that inherent wholeness within ourselves and within others.
We come together not out of need, but out of a shared recognition of that divine spark within each of us.
Exactly. And this shared recognition, the sense of belonging, can be incredibly powerful. It can inspire acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. It creates a ripple effect of love, a wave of understanding that washes over the world, transforming everything it touches.
So we're not passive observers in this process. We're active participants, co-creators of a more beautiful and connected world.
Precisely. And that's empowering, isn't it? It means we have a choice in every moment to contribute to separation or to unity, to perpetuate the illusion of separateness, or to embrace the reality of interconnectedness.
So our thoughts, our words, our actions, they all matter. Even the smallest choices can have a ripple effect, influencing the world around us in ways we may never fully comprehend.
Like that butterfly effect, the smallest action can have far-reaching consequences.
And that brings us back to the idea of companionship. It's not just about finding companions, but about becoming the kind of companion that Rumi describes, the kind that reflects the divine light, that inspires and uplifts, that contributes to a more loving and compassionate world.
Exactly. And that, according to Dr. Larijani, is the essence of Taskia. It's not just about personal purification. It's about becoming a vessel for the divine, allowing love and wisdom to flow through us and out into the world.
So it's about aligning our intentions with our actions, our words with our deeds, our inner world with our outer expression, and ultimately becoming an embodiment of those divine qualities that we're striving to reflect.
You got it. And that process of embodiment, as Rumi reminds us, is not always easy or straightforward.
Yeah.
There'll be moments of doubt, confusion, resistance. There will be times when we feel lost and alone.
It's like we're navigating uncharted territory. There's no map, no set path. We have to trust our intuition, that inner compass that guides us towards the divine.
And in those moments of uncertainty, it's important to remember that we're not alone. We have Rumi's poetry to guide us. We have that divine light within, and we have each other.
We have this incredible community of seekers all on this journey together, supporting each other, inspiring each other, and reminding each other of the beauty and truth that lies at the heart of existence.
And as we continue to walk this path, allowing ourselves to be transformed by the process, we become beacons of light, illuminating the world with the radiance of love, compassion, and wisdom.
We become living embodiments of Rumi's vision, a testament to the power of companionship, the transformative potential of self-discovery, and the boundless beauty of the divine dance that unites us all.
It's truly inspiring to consider the possibilities that open up when we embrace this vision, this way of seeing ourselves and the world.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Rumi's world, I want to leave you with a few questions to ponder. How can you become a better companion to yourself? And in doing so, how can you attract those companions who mirror your aspirations for connection, for self-discovery, for embodying the divine light that resides within us all?
We encourage you to sit with these questions, to explore Rumi's work, and to continue on this journey of uncovering the wisdom that lies within. You know, one thing that really stood out to me from these conversations was Dr. Dinani's perspective on the relationship between wanting and receiving.
Okay.
He suggests that simply wanting something from God is a beautiful expression of our connection to Him. It's a way of acknowledging our dependence on something greater than ourselves.
That's a really interesting point. I think we often view prayer, it's kind of a transactional exchange.
Yeah.
Like we ask for something and we hope to receive it. But what you're saying is that the very act of wanting, of expressing our need, can itself be a powerful act of faith.
Exactly. It flips the script on our typical understanding of prayer. We often approach it from a place of lack. But Rumi suggests that even in our wanting, we're already connected to the divine source of all fullness.
So it's not about trying to manipulate or bargain with a higher power, but about recognizing that connection, that inherent dependence.
Precisely. And that recognition of our own limitations, that humility is essential for spiritual growth.
And this idea of humility really ties in with Rumi's emphasis on tears, doesn't it? Earlier we were talking about Dr. Dinani's explanation that tears in Rumi's poetry represent a breaking down of the ego, a turning away from the material world and towards God.
Yes, the tears are like a symbolic washing away of those layers of pride and self-sufficiency that prevent us from truly connecting with the divine. They represent a softening of the heart, an opening to grace and mercy.
It's like that beautiful line from Rumi that we mentioned earlier. Wherever there's flowing water, there is greenery. Wherever there are flowing tears, there is mercy.
Such a powerful image. The tears, like water, nourish the soul, allowing compassion and grace to flourish within us.
But this all raises a really important question. What about those times when our prayers seem to go unanswered?
Right.
You know, when we cry out to God with tears in our eyes, but nothing seems to change in our external circumstances.
This is a question that Dr. Dinani addressed directly, and he shared a really thought-provoking anecdote. He told a story about a man who complained to a wise person that his prayers were never answered. The wise person replied, "Your very lamenting and pain and burning is our messenger."
Wow. So even in our pain, our frustration, our sense of being unheard, we're still communicating with the divine. We're still sending out a message.
Exactly. It's not necessarily about receiving a specific outcome or a direct answer. It's about the sincerity of our longing, the depth of our feeling, and the vulnerability we express in those moments of raw emotion.
This reminds me of something else Dr. Dinani said about wanting and receiving. He said that even the act of wanting something from God can be an act of acknowledging our inherent poverty before God's richness.
Yes, that's a crucial insight. It's about recognizing the vast difference between our limited human perspective and the infinite nature of the divine. We come to God with empty cups, acknowledging our need for His grace and guidance.
It's that recognition of our own limitations, our own emptiness, that allows us to be filled with the divine.
Precisely. It's about letting go of our need to control, to dictate, to demand, and instead opening ourselves to the possibility of receiving what's truly best for us, even if it's not what we initially thought we wanted.
So it's about surrendering to a wisdom that's beyond our own understanding, trusting that even when we don't see the immediate results of our prayers, something deeper is happening on a spiritual level.
Exactly. It's about faith, not just as a belief system, but as a lived experience of surrender and trust.
This makes me think about another question that often comes up in discussions about faith and prayer. Why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
If God is all-loving and all-powerful, why does he allow suffering to exist in the world?
Ah, yes, the age-old question of suffering. It's a tough one. And while there's no easy answer, Rumi offers some perspectives that might help us navigate those difficult questions.
Okay.
For Rumi, suffering isn't necessarily a punishment or a sign of God's disfavor. It can be an opportunity for growth, for transformation, for deepening our connection to the divine.
So it's not about avoiding suffering at all costs, but about finding meaning in it, learning from it, allowing it to refine us like fire refines gold.
That's a beautiful analogy, and it speaks to the idea that in those difficult times we have a choice. We can turn away from God in anger and resentment, or we can turn towards him seeking solace, guidance, and strength.
So even in the midst of suffering, we can find companionship with the divine.
Exactly, and that's a key theme in Rumi's work. He constantly reminds us that we're never truly alone, that there's a source of love and wisdom always available to us if we just open our hearts to receive it.
That's incredibly comforting, especially when we're going through those dark nights of the soul.
And this connection to the divine isn't just a source of comfort in difficult times, it can be a source of guidance and inspiration in all aspects of our lives.
So how do we cultivate this sense of constant companionship with the divine? How do we keep that channel open to receive that flow of love and wisdom?
Well, Rumi talks a lot about the importance of spiritual practices as a way of quieting the mind, opening the heart, and attuning ourselves to that divine presence. Practices like dhikr, meditation, contemplation, prayer, chanting can all help us to shift our awareness from the limited ego self to the boundless presence of the divine.
It's about creating that inner space, that stillness where we can connect with something larger than ourselves.
Exactly. And it's not just about formal practices. It's about bringing a sense of mindfulness and presence to every aspect of our lives, recognizing the divine spark in every moment, in every encounter, in every breath.
This makes me think of Rumi's beautiful metaphor of the self as a mirror reflecting the divine.
Yeah.
The more we polish that mirror through spiritual practices and self-reflection, the more clearly we reflect those divine qualities of love, compassion, wisdom, and beauty.
It's an ongoing process of refinement, of peeling away the layers of conditioning and ego identification that obscure our true nature, that divine essence within us.
So it's not just about personal transformation, but about letting that transformation radiate outwards, touching the lives of those around us.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, and that our choices, our actions, even our thoughts have a ripple effect on the world.
So in a sense, we're all mirrors reflecting the divine. And the more we polish our own mirrors, the brighter the world becomes.
I love that image. And it brings us back to the theme of companionship. As we become more reflective of the divine, we naturally attract others who resonate with that same aspiration.
It's like we create a magnetic field that draws in those who are on a similar path, seeking that same connection, that same transformation.
It's a beautiful cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
The more we embody love, compassion, and wisdom, the more we attract those qualities into our lives and inspire others to do the same.
And ultimately, that's the power of Rumi's teachings. They inspire us to become better versions of ourselves, to connect more deeply with the divine, and to create a more beautiful and compassionate world.
Exactly. So as we move forward in our exploration of Rumi, I invite you to reflect on these questions.
Okay.
What practices resonate with you? How can you cultivate a deeper sense of connection with the divine in your own life? And how can you become a more radiant reflection of that divine love and wisdom in the world?
These are great questions to contemplate. And as we continue to delve into Rumi's wisdom, I'm excited to see what other treasures we uncover together. As we wrap up our exploration of Rumi for this episode, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface of his wisdom.
I know what you mean. There's just so much depth and richness to uncover in his work.
And, even though we've been focusing specifically on his ideas about prayer, it feels like the conversation's naturally expanded to encompass so much more. Companionship, the nature of the self, the role of spiritual practice, the challenges of the spiritual journey.
It's true. There's a real interconnectedness to all of these themes, and it seems like no matter where you start with Rumi, you inevitably end up touching upon all of them.
Absolutely. There's one more point that I wanted to touch on before we finish up. It was something that Dr. Dinani said about the greatest request we can make in prayer. It really stuck with me.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Very thought-provoking.
He was talking about what we should truly be seeking when we pray.
Right.
So what did he say?
Well, instead of focusing on specific outcomes or material desires, Dr. Dinani shared his personal aspiration, which is to increase in sincerity and truthfulness.
Sincerity and truthfulness. That's not what I would have expected. It's not the usual things we associate with prayer, like health, wealth, or success.
I know. It's a little bit surprising at first, but he went on to explain that these qualities are essential because sincerity is the foundation for all other virtues.
So it's about aligning our inner world with our outward actions, becoming more genuine and authentic in everything we do.
Exactly. It's not about trying to change our external circumstances through prayer. It's about refining our character and deepening our connection with the divine through true self-reflection.
So instead of focusing on what we want to receive, we focus on the kind of person we want to become.
Precisely. And that shift in focus from external desires to internal transformation can have a profound impact on our lives and the lives of those around us.
It's about recognizing that true fulfillment comes from within, from aligning ourselves with those qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom that Rumi's poetry so beautifully expresses.
And as we cultivate these qualities within ourselves, they naturally radiate outwards, influencing our relationships, our actions, and our impact on the world.
So this idea of praying for sincerity and truthfulness, it isn't just about personal gain, it's about recognizing that our own inner transformation can contribute to creating a more beautiful and compassionate world.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it suggests that our spiritual practices aren't just about personal enlightenment, but about becoming a force for good in the world. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things, understanding that our own growth and evolution can have a positive ripple effect.
Exactly. And I think Rumi captures this so beautifully in one of his most famous quotes. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
That's such a powerful image. It reminds us that we contain within us the potential for immense love, wisdom, and compassion. And by nurturing these qualities, we can make a real difference in the world.
So as we conclude this deep dive into Rumi's insights on prayer, I'd like to invite you to consider these questions.
Yes.
How can you embody sincerity and truthfulness in your own life? How can you become a more radiant reflection of the divine light that resides within you?
Remember, even small acts of kindness and compassion can have a ripple effect, creating a more loving and harmonious world.
And if you ever find yourself feeling lost or discouraged on your journey, turn to Rumi's poetry for inspiration. Let his words guide you back to that source of love and wisdom that resides within you.
Thank you for joining us on Wisdom Unveiled. We look forward to diving into more of Rumi's wisdom with you in our next episode.